Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this public online talk from the Contemporary Art Society for Wales. I'm Roland Davis, Vice Chair of CASW, and I have the pleasure of introducing this evening's speaker, Tim Dodds. Good evening, Tim, and welcome to the CASW. Tim is an Edinburgh-based artist who constructs makeshift models out of different materials and then paints them from direct observation. Some of you may already be familiar with Tim's work through his collaboration with the 56 Group Wales, which resulted in the publication At Cross Purposes. Tim has agreed to take questions at the end of this talk for those who are joining us on Zoom. If you want to ask a question, please just put your name into the chat box, and when we get to the point for questions, I will explain how this is going to work. So, Tim, over to you.
Yeah, okay. So, thanks very much, Roland, and thanks everyone for joining this evening. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to present some work to you and talk about some ideas. So I've got some slides of my own work. It starts in 1998. There's a few things, a few early pictures, and I'm going to also show a few pictures by other artists just to give a bit of context about some of the ideas that I'm exploring. So yeah, as Roland says, basically what I do now is that I make models out of quite basic materials, and then I set them up and I make paintings of them from direct observation. So I guess this slideshow kind of shows how I got there. So yeah, so this is the first slide. This is obviously called Toyota, and it was done when I was in the first year at the Slade. And when I got this painting out for this talk, it's kind of interesting just because it's doing something that I'm doing with the paintings, my kind of current paintings, which is it's got some text in it, and the text is actually the title of the painting, and the title kind of is this, in a way, is the sort of starting point for the painting. And when I was back then in 1998, myself and a lot of the other students were looking at painters who use photographs. So obviously people like Gerhard Richter. There was a lot of students doing really kind of sort of highly photographic painting, looking at Gerhard Richter. Peter Doig was another big sort of name that people were looking at, and then sort of some of the painters that are in the Sensation show at the Royal Academy. And I suppose I wasn't entirely kind of comfortable just painting from photographs. I kind of felt like I was sort of missing out a bit. So I was also looking at that time. I was looking at Impressionist painters and post-Impressionist painters. So I was reading like Van Gogh's letters to his brother. I was looking at Cézanne, reading Cézanne's letters, and so yeah, I was going to say Luke Toymans was another painter that I was kind of looking at. He was just, this is one of his early works, and he was just starting to kind of become well known at the time. And Philip Guston, yeah, just included him. He was. I just saw his show at the Tate which is why I included this one. This is a photograph I took when I was at the Tate of this brilliant painting. But he was I think for a lot of painters, you know, at that time and still now, you know, he was a really big person that we were looking at. The second year, I moved into the Slade Life Room. This isn't my painting. This is a painting done by someone in the maybe 1930s or 40s of the Slade Life Room. So my tutor warned me that if I went in there, I might never come out, because it was kind of like a separate, an art school within the Slade, kind of its own separate place. This painting kind of captures the sort of light of the life room really well. It was kind of quite subdued lighting. It had big north-facing windows, and during the daytime, the lights were never switched on. It was always natural light. It's interesting looking at this painting because all the students are male, and it was only until quite late into the 20th century that men and women male and female students could work in the same studios together. So the female students were maybe working from a cast in a different studio. This was my tutor, so Ian Uglo. He sadly died when I was actually in the third year at the Slade. But in the life room, there was the Slade life room's kind of, I suppose, fairly well known for measurement. And I suppose this painting kind of demonstrates that. And this was my other tutor, Norman Norris. He's actually only got two pictures that I could find on the internet of his work. This is one of his drawings. He used to work very, very slowly. He told me he'd been working on one painting for 20 years. And when we're in the life room, we'd have one pose per term. So I suppose we actually didn't really get taught how to measure in there. Most of the teaching was kind of to do with colour. So Ewan or Norman would spend time with the students kind of mixing up colours on their palette. But because you're working from a painting you're working on the pose for so long, you kind of had to work out your own sort of strategies of measurement really to kind of keep the painting going. This is one of my life drawings that I did when I was at the Slade. And it was actually kind of like my triumphant moment at the Slade, because it was, in a way, I found it quite hard being there. I felt in the life room, although I feel like I learned a lot out of it, I was quite cut off from the rest of the students in some ways. Although the rest of the tutors, I had plenty of friends in the other students. But this won the Slade Drawing Prize one year, and it was judged by Paula Rago, and she said that it had a sadistic tenderness about it, which is quite good, but also kind of a bit weird. And then shortly after the Slade, this is painted by Michael Andrews. I moved up to Edinburgh. And let's see. So I spent, this would have been, I think I moved up to Edinburgh in about 2004 or 5. And I spent probably about 10 years just with my artwork, kind of just developing it and kind of working in private, really, just trying lots of different things out. It was kind of a bit of a struggle in some ways, the painting side of it. You know, I had a good time otherwise being in Edinburgh. But the painting I was really kind of struggling with for a fair few years, just trying to find my kind of own place with it, trying to find kind of, I think I'd maybe lost a bit of belief in a way about where I was going with it. So I was trying lots of different things out, and I was also in a band at the time, and the band was with other kind of art students, and it was called the Pineapple Chunks. and we wrote a song about kind of struggling being painters out of art school. So I'm going to connect to my Bluetooth speaker and play you a little bit. Right, I'm going to play about a minute or so of this, okay? I've got half a dozen paintings, but I don't know where to put them. Why did you put them under your bed? I've got half a dozen paintings, but I don't know where to put them. Why did you put them under your bed? Oh, it's so sad that you can't sell your paintings. Oh, it's so sad that you can't sell your paintings. Oh, it's so sad that you can't sell your paintings. Oh, it's so sad that you can't sell your paintings. There's a mouse under my bed, running all over my paintings. There's a mouse under my bed, running all over my paintings. Right, so I suppose if you could catch that, I hope you could maybe hear some of the lyrics, but it was kind of about having paintings and having to store them under my bed rather than selling them and having mice running over them, which is kind of partly true. So this is some of the work that I did kind of during that time, kind of coming out of that in a way. So I'd kind of stopped. I was trying different things. I'd stopped working on canvas and bought a big roll of paper, and I was doing lots of different. I was trying to sort of just find my way through working on lots of different things. So I did these. I started making kind of models of figures and animals and setting them up into compositions. This is a oil pastel drawing called Cavemen. And I suppose I was trying to actually use the models to maybe draw kind of scenes that maybe looked real. This is another one called Lion. But they actually still kind of look like models. So the kind of anatomy is sort of all weird and kind of wrong and kind of clunky. But they do have a kind of sort of sense of they do kind of have a bit of a sense of composition. And right, Van Gogh perspective frame, using that, I've got a kind of portable perspective frame. I've kind of been using these ever since, really, to kind of draw out my composition. You kind of start the pictures with it, and you kind of put it to one side, kind of once you've kind of just got an idea of the composition. This was a this is a sort of painting on paper that I did, where the kind of models really kind of became the subject matter of the painting. And then this is 2012. I've started doing the MFA at Edinburgh College of Art, and I was kept on going with this idea of making models and doing setting them up and just doing paintings from them. So I was looking at sort of contemporary sculptors at the time. I've just picked out a sort of slightly random selection of people that I was kind of looking at. So this is Per Kirkby, who's also a painter. I think that's his name anyway. This is Franz West, one one of his little sculptures, Evan Holloway. So more like kind of sculptors who are making kind of little maquettes of kind of unusual things. This is Sam Windett, Fishley and Weiss. Diego Bianchi, he's making kind of sculptures out of rubbish. And these are some of the little models that I was making in my studio at Edinburgh College of Art. Just quite kind of quick things. I was still in the band at that time, so I was kind of coming in fairly hungover and taking these kind of ibuprofen and paracetamol and things. This is quite a quick painting. Small paintings I was doing. This was had a kind of trying different kind of ground. So this was drawn out and then covered in Viridian dark green paint and painted over. And there was painted on top of that with kind of shining light on top of it to create shadows. This was done. I was going into the metal workshop at ECA and making kind of metal. Just randomly making metal armatures using scraps of metal and then turning them into quite kind of crude sculptures and setting them up, painting them. There's like a kind of costume room, which had a load of, where you could borrow all kinds of things at Edinburgh College of Art. So this was a big painting that I did. With different kinds of skeletons. It's got I think that's a dog skeleton. There's a pig skull, I think that is. And then some of my models as well, and some jars they had like jars with bits of lichen and all kinds of stuff. So I was also looking at, as well as kind of contemporary sculpture and painting, I was also looking at older painting and kind of Wunderkammer pictures of unusual artifacts. And this, I was looking, Jan van Kessel, I was looking at his work quite a bit. He made kind of encyclopedic and ethnographic paintings of around the world. This is quite a bad photo of a painting that I did, but I don't have the painting anymore. It's quite a big painting, and it was kind of taking some of those ideas from looking at those older painters, and I suppose kind of looking at contemporary sculpture sort of through the lens of kind of old painting. And I borrowed a theatre spotlight, which I'd shine onto the models that I was painting to cast shadows. And this one's sort of natural light, just using, pretty basic things like some sticks and stone, some weeds put in a jar. There's also, I think this here is a cast of a plastic bottle. This one's got a sneaky kind of iron brew on the side of it. So this is William Scott. So I think I was looking at, whilst my paintings were kind of unusual things in them, there's also a kind of sense of the everyday about them, like everyday reality. And so I was kind of looking at William Scott and some of the sort of maybe kitchen sink painters of pots and pans. And also I really like William Scott, how he does still life painting, but it's also abstract painting as well. So this one's pelvis, which has got a pelvis which I borrowed from the costume room as well. I don't know why they had a pelvis, but that's what this object here. It's a crab shell. This is a kind of dried spore that they had, some sort of dried out fungal spore type thing. I don't know exactly what it was. And then with some of the kind of models that I was making. This is in the second year at Edinburgh College of Art. Started making geometric objects. And suppose the geometric objects, there's something kind of mathematical about them. You find them in Renaissance and old painting as well. It's kind of, they kind of, I suppose they represent ideal objects, and they also capture the light. If you're shining light on your objects, these kind of geometric objects capture the light really well. And they also quite a good kind of contrast alongside this sort of more crude models of clay and things that I was making. I've continued to use these geometric objects, but this was painted on, it's quite big, it's painted on board, and it had some collaged elements as well, some photographic collaged elements stuck on, like a plastic cup, a stick stuck in clay, and a kind of plastic tray. This is called courgette apostrophe, which is similar to the last one. It's got a photograph of a courgette stuck on there, like kind of like an apostrophe mark. I was looking at a few other painters, and it's actually, this is when I've come out. This is 2014-15. I'd finished at Edinburgh College of Art, and I was actually invited by Francis, who's here this evening, Francis Woodley, to be part of an exhibition, Models and Materialities, Confabulation in Contemporary Still Life. So in a weird way, I'd not really thought about my own work as being still life so much, even though I suppose it really was. But it was then that I kind of started looking around more at other artists who were kind of working in still life, and that this show was kind of sort of to do with artists that were making or depicting kind of unnameable, ambiguous objects in their paintings. But these I don't think these artists were part of that exhibition. These are kind of, again, sort of randomly picked out. So this is Neil Goll, Damien Meads, Catherine Story, Simon Ling. This is one painting that I did, Aries. It's got an upside down sheep skull and very bright light shining on it. And another painting, this is Isosceles. So I was kind of trying to push it towards the still life, kind of towards abstraction, and kind of working quite quickly and experimenting with quite bright colours, but also working in different ways. So this is more, I suppose, more subtle. Some of these geometric objects placed with these models in front of an open window in my studio. And this is another one done in that same studio. This one took much longer and reworked a lot of times. This is Forrest Bess. Really like his work, and I was looking quite a bit at his work and some other sort of, I suppose you could call them kind of visionary painters, so painters that use lots of kind of arcane imagery, alchemical imagery. This is another one by Forrest Bess. This is one of my own paintings, which kind of incorporates some of that sort of imagery into it. I was reading a book by James Elkins, What Painting Is, and that explores the parallels between painting and alchemy. So, like alchemy, painting transforms the base material of paint into something more valuable, like the finished painting. And in alchemy, the lowly materials transformed into gold. And Elkins describes, there's just a little quote from Elkins which I really like. He describes the base material, or the materia prima. Says it could be the commonest lump of clay or the most ordinary nondescript pebble. what is more, it could actually be repulsive. It could be a poor plant in a sump, reeking of swamp gas, or a turd in a compost pile, slowly returning to earth. So I really like that, and it helped me explore the idea of the kind of abjectness of my own models and the kind of lowly, kind of crude sort of nature of them, and also started looking about recycling some of the oil paint in my paintings and incorporating them into the models. This is homunculus. This is a model I did of a kind of homunculus. So that's kind of looking at alchemy and quite directly, really. Sculpture garden, a little small painting this. And then some of these are all quite small paintings. This is just showing what they look like together on a wall in an exhibition. Another one. And then I was doing paintings of these models, but I had the models sitting on quite bright backgrounds, just to try and isolate the models a bit more rather than having them as part of a kind of painted scene. Then working quite quickly as well. Just trying to explore this kind of imagery, and also working really slowly. This is a painting called Things for Painting, and it was the title of an exhibition that I had in Dundee. And it was painted in a new studio, and I wanted to just take advantage of it's a studio I'm in now, of the kind of north-facing light, just to spend a few months on this painting. They're quite large objects. I would say they're maybe 3 or 4 foot high, placed on a roll of paper. That's it in the exhibition. Also did some large paintings which were painted much more quickly. You can see some of these geometric models, a tower of those, and some of these kind of more ambiguous models that I was making. And there's another one. This is Evil Eye, this one's called, with bright light shining down on it to create the shadows. And I made some some giant geometric objects to kind of go in the exhibition space as well. And then after that, I took back some of these big models that I made, and set up some really large still lifes, probably about as tall as me, and painted them really quite quickly using my fingers. So they're quite kind of expressive paintings. This one's called Mutant Disco. I can't remember what this one's called. And then this one is my kind of COVID paintings, painted during COVID and lockdown. It's called Royals. And it's very, very big indeed. It's probably 2.50 meters or more in height. I bought a new easel, which was enabling me to work on a bigger scale. But it's also a challenge of having such a big canvas right in front of you whilst you're painting from the models directly. So the models were maybe about 2 foot high. And I drew all this out, and then we were locked out of the studio. Couldn't get back in for another few months, and luckily when I came back, the models were still standing. So I was able to move on from the drawing to painting it. So they kind of looked like, to me, they as I was painting it, they looked like kind of they looked like 2 figures to me, kind of dressed in sort of ridiculous costumes, like they've got a sense of ridiculous kind of self-importance about them, which is why they call them royals. And also, just this bit here this is actually a something that I've done more of in my work, which it's what I'd say is, what I'd call it a failed painting. So it's a canvas that I've put to one side because it's not worked, but then I've scraped and smeared oil paint onto it from my at the end of the session in the studio. I've just scraped oil paint onto it, and it's kind of become part of the models that I make. So you see some more of those. It's a smaller painting, polyhedron towers, not a great photo, unfortunately. And medium-sized painting of some of these clay models. So I was also, the models that I make are kind of reform. So the clay models, they often break apart, and then I kind of put them back together again, and they become different models. Blue circle. As printed out some kind of symbols of shapes, symbols, numbers, letters, and stuck them onto card and put some wire on them, and then stuck them in a lump of clay, and they kind of become objects within the painting. This object here is a kind of big lump of clay with some batteries stuck in it. And this is plastic cups. So this is, what will this be, like 2021, 22 maybe. A small painting. It was they're not actually plastic cups, they're plastic casts of plastic cups, if that makes sense. So I got plastic cups and poured plaster in them, but some of the plastic cups are kind of crumpled up to get all these different kind of shapes. I suppose I wanted to make a painting which was maybe had things which were all quite similar, in contrast to some of the other paintings which feature models which are all different shapes and sizes. And Plastic Cups 2, it's a sequel. It's got the 2 here stuck in a lump of clay. Die Pyramid, another small painting. Numbers, right. These numbers kind of give it they're kind of like museum labels, or category. They kind of categorize the models in a way, and it's also an idea about turning sort of things, that numbers which don't really exist in the real world, into objects or physical things. It's also, again, looking at thinking about James Elkin's book, and he talks about numbers and how numbers and counting works in painting. He says paintings are full of numbers. So he talks about the monad, or the single, the idea of oneness, and then the dyad, which could be male and female. So they've got kind of mysterious meanings rather than necessarily logical, mathematical. Numbers have more mysterious meaning in painting, rather than being to do with mathematics. And so you've got like the triad, which could be the Holy Trinity, or lots of other different things. Then numbers can also have a sort of superstitious kind of quality about them as well. It could be unlucky or lucky numbers. And so this painting's got things that can be counted, the models themselves, but then they kind of break down into brush strokes. And the brush strokes was, in one painting there could be, there could be thousands of brush strokes in one painting. But then these brush strokes all kind of come back to the one. They all come back together, hopefully anyway, into one painted image. This next painting kind of uses the numbers again. It's another really big painting, and this painting is called Always Counting, Never Adding Up. It's it was a painted quite quickly, this one, and it was. I'll just read the quote from what the title, where the title comes from. So Elkin says that paint is so compelling because it's always counting but never adding up, always speaking but never saying anything rational, always playing at being abstract but never leaving the clotted body. And then this is another smaller painting. It's interesting doing big paintings and small paintings, because when I started doing the big paintings, I kind of felt like they'd be the kind of expressive ones, using big brushes, and maybe the smaller paintings would be the more detailed paintings. But it's actually kind of the opposite. So the big paintings is an opportunity to sort of zoom in. It's like you've got this big canvas and you can really zoom in on detail, and the smaller paintings you kind of capture the details much more with bigger brush strokes, and much more kind of gesturally in a way. It also includes another of these kind of failed paintings. So this is a painting that I did a picture on, but wasn't happy with it. It didn't really work, and so I've then smeared oil paint, and then this has become subject of the painting. It's like a painting within a painting, but a failed painting within a painting. And there's another. This painting is called Star. It's got another one of these kind of failed paintings in it. As does this one. This is Isosceles 2. And this is a failed painting, obviously up in the corner here, kind of stuck at an angle. So this would be second half of 2003. I was thinking about relationship between painting and archiving. So I've got a few ideas on that, and how my paintings document all the processes and activities of model making, setting the objects up. So my paintings kind of document all those different aspects of my practice, and also how the objects kind of reappear and are transformed across the different paintings. So I suppose it's this idea that there's a kind of sense of loss or trying to keep hold of something. So by making the paintings, you're kind of documenting it or archiving it, and the paintings themselves could be seen as a kind of archive. So it's as I say, it's like an archive of all these thousands of brush strokes that go into the painting, and each brush stroke kind of contains it, kind of liquid thought and gestures and emotions, and the paintings also kind of capture my sensation of looking at the things. And as I'm working from direct observation, that's all there is. The painting's all there is that kind of captures it. There's no photograph documenting it. And I suppose if you're thinking about how artworks are archived or documented, it's often done with photography or film. It's not really done with painting anymore, and the the document which does the archives, the photograph or the film, is often sort of secondary to the actual to the art performance or whatever it is. Whereas what I'm doing with the painting, that the painting turns the archivization, if that's a word, into the kind of creative focal point of the process. So the kind of archiving becomes the kind of focal point of the process. And I suppose it's when you're talking about painting, documenting something, well, it feels like that's the wrong word. It feels like painting's maybe kind of lost its function to document. It did this in the olden days before photography, but that's kind of taken over. But there's kind of, I suppose there's some situations where painting and drawing still does document, and that I've only thought of a few, but an obvious one is when courtroom artists draw what happens in the courtroom because they can't take photographs, and maybe other examples could be like remote tribes or people that don't have access to cameras or technology. Also thinking about individual archives kind of got a sort of, in a way, they've got a bit of a subversive value about them, in that they can challenge the way in which archives or information's commonly held, and it might be, held by governments or corporations, and information's controlled or omitted and manipulated, and algorithms are applied to it. This is a small painting called Football. So it's what I mentioned at the start. This idea that the title's there at the beginning. So I made this model of a football, and I knew I was going to do a painting called Football. This is a painting called Homepage, and it's actually going to be the homepage of my. It actually is the homepage of my website. See if I can show that. So I'll show you what I mean. So this is, it's just in construction. If you click on Instagram, then my Instagram page comes up, and click on artwork, and the artwork comes up. So it's the idea that the painting's got two kind of existences. It's exists physically, but it's also it's also got a kind of online life as well. And then coming up to the last, got two more to go. This is painting from earlier in the year, Insane Orange Cat. It's thinking about cut-up poetry, and it's the Dadaist technique, and also used by beat poets, and William Burroughs and Marquis Smith from The Fall used to use the cut-up technique for his to write his lyrics. It's actually quite hard, I found, to put these words into the composition. It takes quite a lot of work. It was harder than I thought it would be, but it's kind of an interesting. It's useful for me to sort of start with the title, and so, for example, from the title, I then kind of made this very kind of crude, sort of animal-like totem model here, and it's kind of just a way forward. And I suppose it's kind of fun because it's like the title's a found object in itself, and I've always found title in paintings really difficult. slightly awkward task where you do a painting and then you've got to think, oh, what am I going to call this painting? And this kind of gets around that. This is a painting that I've just done. It's quite a big painting called a failed painting, and it's I suppose kind of a provocative title. Or maybe a bit of a risky title in a way, but it's painting owning up to its own kind of potential failure. Like it's quite a kind of concentrated, saturated, difficult painting in a way. But I like the idea of. I mean, I like the idea of artists, painters. I like it when they discuss how painting can fail. So Philip Guston did that really well, talking about how difficult painting was and how kind of hit and miss it was, and how hard-earned success can be. Because if a painting can fail, then it can also succeed. It's also the idea of what makes a painting a success or a failure. You know, who decides if a painting's a success or a failure? So you know, you've got all these kind of competitions that you can enter in, and then it's up to it's kind of the whim of whoever's on the judging panel to decide if something gets in or not. Made me think of the Salon des Refusés in Paris, where a lot of a lot of the good stuff the painters decided to put on their own paintings, having been refused from the main show. And then I've got just because I took this photo in the hall, and the lighting is not very good, but it's quite a big painting. So that's it on the easel, and then this is it next to the objects, and then that is the end of the talk. So thanks very much. I hope you could hear all of that second bit after we got through the
we did. Well done. If you could stop share screen for the moment, yeah. I think. And if everybody would like to switch to speaker view, you'll now find that you are able to unmute and we can get to questions. We've got a couple in the chat box, one with the full question and one just I have a question. So it's good fun to start with not knowing what it's going to be. So Robert Harding, you have a question.
Thank you, Tim. I understand that you've recently had a Creative Scotland Award. What have you used that award for?
All right, yeah. Thanks, Robert. Well, basically just to live. I've also got to work as well, but it's a good amount for 2 years. I mean, studios are so expensive in Edinburgh and going up in price. So it's a lot of it goes on the studio. I've also bought lots of nice stretcher frames, good quality stretcher frames and linen and materials. So yeah, it'll be sad when that runs out.
So you didn't have to justify your application in terms of exhibition or whatever.
Yeah, so it's actually really good. They've Creative Scotland have just had a big funding cut, so I'm hoping they'll be able to keep on doing it. But they extended the kind of length of the project that you could apply for. So I was able to apply for 2 years, and it's to do with developing work, reaching audiences. So this is obviously really good for that. And also, I've already had 2 exhibitions which were at the start of the project last year, and then I'm going to show. So I'm developing a new body of work, which I'm then going to show in exhibition next year. And what I was showing with the website, which is under construction, that's something that I'm developing as part of it too. So it's kind of got these image maps that you can see, and that's the painting that I showed. That's just a kind of starting idea for that. I'm going to develop that so you can click on. Actually, I missed an opportunity, Robert, because within that painting there was your object that you cast for me, and you can actually click on that object in the painting, and then it brings up a photo of your object. So I'm kind of looking to create this website, which could also be a kind of accompanying. It could be a website, but it could also be kind of an accompanying thing to an exhibition where you've got all the images, and you can kind of click on parts of the images to get through to links with, which could be the models, or it could be other kind of information or research about it. So yeah, I'm just kind of in the middle of the project now, and it goes on until I think April, May next year.
Right. I have another question, Roland, if you want another question.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll take Sean's question next and I'll come back to you. How's that?
Okay, fine. I'll make mine short. Tim, I thought the models were actually amazing. Do you ever exhibit the models alongside the paintings?
I have a bit, but I did a bit. I did when I had my MFA show, but and also one of the slides I think showed the Dundee show had some big models that I'd made in the exhibition space. But apart from that, I don't really show the models alongside the paintings because partly because I like the idea that the paintings kind of you've got to work it all out from the paintings in a way, you know. So the models are just something you've got to imagine, but also, you know, the painting I find painting really hard. Some paintings you can do them quite quickly, but they can also take ages. If you're working on an exhibition, you kind of all the work and the hard work goes into kind of making the paintings, and then you don't. And if you had the luxury of time, maybe you could work out how you could some sort of format in which you could show the models alongside. But it's something that I'm thinking about, and also Robert and I have, you know, we've kind of had this correspondence that we've done throughout Cross Purposes, and I'll actually get it now. So yeah, Robert's cast me, did a cast for me, which is a lump of plasticine, which he's, you know, cast. He's cast in metal for me. So I'm going to send Robert some little models that I've made, and he's going to have some ideas for casting them. I've already kind of put this depicted this in a painting. So Robert and I have maybe got an idea for a future collaboration, and which would be an excellent opportunity for me to maybe, I don't know, maybe learn a few things from Robert, and maybe see how I could kind of develop the sort of the models, and maybe because I just call them models really. I don't really think of them as sculptures, but maybe I could think about how I could turn the models into sculptures that I'd exhibit.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah,
Go on, Robert.
thanks,
As you're obviously a mutual appreciation society, I'll let you have a second question.
The second question is that, Tim, you're a dad. I just wonder how your children react to your work and to the models in particular. I mean, do they help? Do they make models for you?
Yeah, they kind of, sometimes they come into the studio, but I think they're a bit freaked out by it. So my daughter's 5, and she thinks it really smells in here. She doesn't like the smell of the oil. So, but they could help. What we do after school is we kind of have an art and craft session. So that's kind of the artwork that we do together. So they'll do some. My daughter makes inventions where she'll say that she wants to make, I don't know, something really ambitious, and then she makes it out of card and sellotape and all kinds of stuff, which is actually, the model making that I do is kind of a way into painting for me, and it's quite a kind of childlike, almost relaxing or kind of cathartic part of the making the artwork. So it's something that I really enjoy, and it's just having sort of basic things to hand and just seeing what you can come up with, and it's kind of like it kind of gives me a sort of point of departure where I can then think about what I'm gonna how I'm gonna kind of getting ideas for paintings and for forms, and getting some ideas for new paintings.
Right. I can see Francis putting her hand up. So, Francis, do you have a question?
Well, it's not so much a question, it's sort of an observation, which, it'd be interesting to have a response to, because I've worked with Tim now on a number of projects, and what I've seen this evening about the paintings that you've done with the numbers on, I'm finding that fascinating because I haven't seen those before. And it just strikes me when you're talking about those paintings with the numbers and then moving on into your website, which I presume was also helped by the funding from Creative Scotland. I just think it's fascinating that you're thinking about painting as archiving and almost reclaiming that administrative function from organisations and corporations and bodies, whatever, who, when they archive somebody's work or archive historical works, assume an authority over that. And it seems like you're sort of reclaiming that in your painting. But then I thought it was really fascinating to see you almost moving from the painting into the website, where you're doing what you do in painting in the website. So the both of them are quite ludic, aren't they? They're both playful. And yeah, I just, because most painters will think, oh, I've got to do a website. That's a real bind. And they don't like doing it. And for some, it's expensive and boring and all the rest of it, and also alienating from their own work. So I find it fascinating that you're grafting the method and the process from one to the other and back. Yeah, I found it fascinating.
Good, that's good. I mean, the website, I suppose it'd be nice if it was a bit more finished for me to be able to kind of demonstrate it, but it's just a kind of idea I had, and it's kind of like it's what you say. It's kind of playful. So I think when I talk about my work, I think I sound quite serious because I suppose I do take it quite seriously, and that's just my personality. But it is actually quite playful, and there's a kind of element of humor.
Well, that was actually something I was going to say earlier, is that what I've written down here, that it's your painting is such a serious enterprise for you, and yet it's got wit and it's humor and absurdity and playfulness.
Yeah, well, I suppose you can't really help it if you're working by yourself a lot, so you end up kind of taking what you do quite seriously, and if something doesn't really work, then it can be a bit sort of devastating, but you kind of get over it. I'm better at that. Like now I've got kids and stuff, I'm a bit more kind of balanced. I can sort of deal with that. But yeah, I think that the painting being on the website, it's kind of a fun idea because it's sort of like it's a bit of a reversal. So the website the physical paintings kind of archiving the website in a way. If you've got a painting that's the homepage, then that kind of becomes the archive for the website, where it's sort of normally the other way around. Like the paintings are archived on the website. So it's just kind of playing with that idea a bit. It's kind of complicated, I suppose, but kind of good fun.
That aspect very fascinating.
Okay, well, thanks, Francis, and thank you to Sean and for Robert for their questions as well. I think we're really beginning to run out of time now, so the main thing, of course, is to say thank you to Tim for such an interesting talk, and I have to say, I think I've learned a lot about the whole process this evening, and it's been absolutely fascinating. Also, I think that Tim is the first artist who's spoken to us who decided to play a song as part of the process as well. We did have a curator who once tried to make noise.
On the CASW thing.
I'm getting somebody talking across me. I'm not sure who that is, but anyway, sorry. In a moment, I'm going to invite you all to say thank you to Tim, but before I do, if we have anybody participating this evening who'd like to know more about CASW, please go to the website casw.org.uk, where you'll find everything about us, including how to become a member. So this is the last public online talk for 2024, but we'll be holding several public in-person talks in the autumn at the Cardiff School of Art and Design, and there'll be further online talks early in 2025. So please look out for details in due course. Finally, can I suggest everybody switches to gallery view, unmute, put your cameras on, and say thank you to Tim in the traditional manner. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And good night, everybody. Good night.